Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our third quarter 2024 results video conference. We are here live from our headquarters in São Paulo, and we will be splitting this event into three parts. First, our CEO, Mário Leão, will talk about the main highlights of the period and also the directions for our growth in the coming quarter. Next, our CFO, Gustavo Alejo, will give us a detailed analysis of our performance. And finally, there will be a Q&A session. I will give you now some instructions. We have three audio options on the screen: all the content in Portuguese, all the content in English, or the original audio. To choose your option, just click on the button at the bottom center of your screen. To ask a question, click on the hand icon at the bottom of your screen as well. The presentation we are about to give is now available to download from our IR website. And now, I'll hand over to Mário to start the presentation. Hello, good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to welcome you. It's 10:05 in the morning. I will start, as usual, with a summary of the quarter, the large monthly figures, and then I will quickly go over some of the aspects that brought us over here today, and also we will talk about the strategic evolution. On the left-hand side, starting with the numbers, our quarterly net income is 3.7 billion, which is, again, a two-digit growth quarter-on-quarter. We had 10% quarter-on-quarter from the first to the second quarter, and now we are repeating a two-digit growth this quarter, and another important growth if you look at the annual figures. Well, but more important than the numbers per se, of course, numbers are important, but we are also pleased to say that we are making important steps towards increasing profitability. We will hear us talk a lot about profitability. We are really focused on having an operation that grows fast in terms of profitability, resuming levels of profitability that we had in the past, but now this time with a more diversified mix, more sustainable mix, and this is what we've been building throughout the past years. Our ROAE is 17%, which is an important growth, 1.5% in an annual growth, even higher. Some highlights of the major lines. Now, if you look at a comparative base year on year, our NII is growing 16%, and this is an increase in performance in almost all the lines of NII. We are growing in terms of, loan NII, client NII, market NII, 16% against a portfolio growth of 6%. So at the end, we are producing more over a RWA base that is growing single digits, but our NII is growing beyond that level. And this is pretty much aligned with our strategy to extract more value from our capital base. And our capital base will certainly grow, but we want to extract more value and at the same time increase profitability. In terms of fees, year on year, the numbers grew 13%. Certainly, this is one of the best percentages year on year. And soon, Gustavo will elaborate more on that because in terms of the commercial numbers, we are growing. And we had positive performance in many of our lines, and this just reinstates what I've been saying to you that has to do with our very focused strategy to diversify our macro business portfolios. We also had a positive performance in terms of funding. 5% year on year may sound like a modest figure, but the quality of the numbers is what matters the most. So for us, this is what matters more. We could be growing two digits with funding, but we are making an effort to change the funding mix of the bank. So we want to probably focus more on individuals and retail, and what we pay in terms of deposits and funding, we are lowering the costs. Our funding costs are coming down, meaning that our NII expansion has a lot to do with knowing how we will allocate capital on the liability side or the funding side in our balance sheet as well. So to conclude, speaking about what is in the middle, our LLP is growing 5% year on year, which is below the growth of the portfolio. So we're having a very good annual and monthly performance. On the right-hand side, we talk about our strategic pillars. We've been talking about all of these topics over and over. So the first topic is that our everyday agenda within the bank is that we are obsessed by principality. Principality for us is very important, and we tell our clients that we want to be a bank that is more present in their everyday lives. And we will talk more a little bit about it. And transactionality is also key when it comes to diversifying our business. We do not want to demonize credit because credit is certainly something important for our results, but we want to have diversified credit. Our credit was mostly concentrated in the lower brackets of the population, but we want also to increase fees, increase funding, and other results. We also want to grow credit, focus on growing capital. So we are very obsessive in terms of how I allocate capital, because as any other bank, we have to look at where we can allocate capital that will also help us increase service to our client. We will also talk about investments. The investment pillar has been quite important to the bank, and we are clearly moving in the right direction. And there is also a new element, and that is our new positioning vis-a-vis SMEs, a new signature, and we just launched a new brand, and I'll talk about it in a moment. Well, this is a new slide. I will just go over it very quickly. This will just help us to do a wrap-up about the agenda in the past 3 years. Mainly in the past 3 years, we focus on a new strategic definition, more earmarked towards diversification, and I talked about that. We are focusing on some major pillars, and from these pillars, we have to design where we have to invest more. So we decided to focus on the investment pillar. We are making several investments. We are creating a AAA advisory line for high income. We are investing a lot in technology. We have an investment portal, something that we never had before. So this is just one of the examples. In terms of fees, we are also focusing on several initiatives. Some of them are already bearing fruits. We are evolving a lot also in the consortium area, wholesale. I mean, there have been some challenges here and there, but we are focusing on big pillars, and we are investing in these major pillars, and we will talk about them in a moment in more detail. So this portfolio design has to do with increasing profitability. So sometimes we have to talk about capital allocation discipline, focusing on returns. We want to grow, but we do not want to be bigger, but we want to be more profitable. And by being more profitable, we can build a healthier, growth path. I mean, technology and banks do not walk apart. I mean, they walk hand in hand, and you will see that throughout the presentation. I do not want to have technology as being a separate item, because technology is present everywhere. And in the past 3 years, we focus on reducing risk, and we remodel our portfolio. From now on, certainly, evolution will continue, and we'll continue to extract value from all of these pillars. But I would like to leave with you 3 takeaways. The first is that, indeed, if I were to summarize the focus or what we want to have from our clients, we want to value each single client, and not, across the board. I want every client to feel that they have a single and unique relationship with Santander Bank, be it in terms of mass retail, private or large corporate, or even a very small-sized company. Of course, we would do that backed by technology. Otherwise, it would be impossible to have hyper-personalization across the board. I mean, we want to hyper-personalize our relationship with all of the SMEs. We have more than 65 million clients, and we can only cover all of the spectrum with a lot of technology. Technology helps with UX, or user experience, and also using AI. For mass retail, we managed to have a very important performance, and capital generation focusing on recovering profitability. On the right-hand side, you have the list of our pillars here. I think you're very familiar with them. The first one being client centricity. This is a strategy that we will not change. So constantly, we will pursue these 5 pillars. Well, customer centricity is important, and we have an asset that not all the banks have. We have huge scale. We have all the products we need to have. Many of the clients that we need to have are already on board, and we continue to grow. We are increasingly diversifying our portfolio. We already have a positive legacy. We have people with extensive experience in loans and other things, but now we have to go to the next level. And certainly, people and technology are key to our strategy. Now, speaking about customer centricity, on the left-hand side, you have just pictures of our 3 major campaigns. This year, Santander changed its signature. The new signature is Começa Agora. We've been using another signature in the past few years, but now our signature has changed because now we want to be closer to our clients. And now this is a campaign that we launched about 6 weeks and 1 day. It starts with Santander Select, which is Começa com Você, and now we will launch our new positioning for corporate and SMEs, which is the message called Começa Todos os Dias, or it starts every day. So this is the new message we want to convey, meaning that we want to be with you every day. We want to have a relationship with you every day. And in the middle column, we have some of the strategies that are part of this new position. We do like clients that only consume one product from Santander, but what we want is to have a more encompassing relationship with clients. We want to convert clients that only have one kind of product into clients that have a transactional relationship with the bank. So I will convert clients that are only focused on real estate and others that do not have Pix with us, even though they have a credit card with us. So we want to increase this relationship that clients have with us. And to do that, we are using technology. The entire industry is doing the same thing. But the most important takeaway is that credit continues to be a key to our operation. But the credit is just the means to reach the customer, to reach principality with clients. Of course, I want credit to be well priced, and it's been well priced. And you will see when you look at our volumes and spreads, we are really evolving on the positive side when it comes to pricing. But the main target is to increase our relationship with clients. So our NPS is evolving. We evolved by 13 basis points. There was a drop in NPS, but now we are able to recover, ground. We are putting customer experience in the middle, and that's why we made good improvements. And certainly we will continue to evolve. To the right-hand side, we also evolve in our digital journey year on year, and we are also making progress in the assisted journey. The NPS of the stores is a highlight, which appears on the right-hand side of the screen. This is NPS of service, and this measures how our new store model, where we serve all clients. It's not that the store is the single owner of the customer base, but they are part of a big universe. So now we are serving customers much better now than in the past. Here we talk about transactionality. There are many takeaways in this slide, but I will just focus on a few. Certainly, transactionality means that we are present in what clients consume in all of the transactions every day. And this is probably the main definition of principality. We have 3 main blocks of principality at the bank. We have one of them is transactionality, is one that applies to all of the other blocks. We also have the credit pillar, those that ask for more structure loans or payroll deductible loans or real estate loans or mortgage loans or auto loans. So transactionality is the common block, the block that measures this close relationship we have with our clients, the fact that we want to be the bank that is very close to our clients' lives. Cards, I mean, the spending is growing 10%. The average spending is growing 10% year on year for cards, and we are just beginning. There is still a lot of room to cover. We are growing our base of active card holders. We have a very good pace of sales. So we have 87% of our, current account holders that also have our credit cards. Not only we're selling more credit cards, but we are activating more cards. I mean, 3 months after the sale, we are activating 5 percentage points above average. And our NPS for credit cards is quite positive. We're also working on a new platform, new credit card systems together with the group. And one of the benefits of being part of a larger group is that we can develop things together. So this new credit card system means that we are now applying for debit cards, and next year will be credit card. It's all based on the cloud, and this will give us cost efficiency, and other kinds of efficiencies. This is a very good example of what we're doing together with the group. We have Select Global, which is part of a global platform. So still talking about transactionality, for corporate, cross-selling has gained momentum. From a base of 100, we escalated to 107, and this has to do with the total revenue. We are growing 7 points above, meaning that we are, in fact, moving towards further diversification. And as I said before, technology is always present, and technology is embedded in the customer journey. Pix is the most basic and standardized product around the industry, but our NPS increased 16% for Pix year on year. It's not that it was bad, but now it's 83. That means that there was a clear evolution. Pix now involves 2 phases throughout the journey. We are investing a lot, and we want to have the best NPS in the market. Now, to briefly talk about credit, we'll start with what is in the bottom to the right-hand side. We are the largest consumer finance company for auto acquisition. We grew 20% our portfolio year on year, and we have this with, over 90 delinquency is dropping. Net revenue is growing 33%. It's not easy to grow 20% in the portfolio year on year because that also implies in a lot of variable costs. But because of our efficiency, we're always trying to do more with less, or at least, more with the same. So our performance has been quite good. Our NPS is 91. We have a partnership with almost all of the largest OEMs in Brazil, and we have a cross-selling of the bank, and this is growing, a lot. I mean, the consumer finance operation, only this year alone, we bring more than 500,000 clients that are now becoming active clients of the bank. So our journey of activating clients also goes through the consumer finance operation. Okay, the slide also talks about mass retail. So last year, the net revenue increased 113%. So it started with 100 and now it's 213. So we are doing their risk with a very healthy portfolio, and the cost base was dropping, 12%. This is quite positive. And very briefly, I have a comment on Select. Select continues to grow. The share of Select is growing among individuals. So credit, again, just to conclude, it's a very important element of our portfolio, but the message is that this is just a complementary offering. Credit is quite important, but it has to be well priced, and it has to be well, earmarked in terms of client quality and volume. But it has to be part of an end, which is to better serve our clients. We will continue to grow credit. And just to conclude, I just have some messages about hyper-personalization. I'm sure we will talk more about it. But I would just like to emphasize that through real-time customized offering and data entry, adaptive journeys, and efficiency when we approach clients, we are now pricing per client. We are giving, terms per client. And this goes from mass retail to corporate clients. And now talking about investment, to the right-hand side you have Toro. Toro is our digital brokerage firm. We did the rebranding of Toro, so Toro is now becoming a more prevailing part of Santander operations. Santander has the human channel represented by AAA, by our own advisory operation, but also high income, private, and individuals. And Toro brings the best digital experience in the market. Both offerings are very close to one another. We sell Toro now through our Santander channels, and through that we are also experiencing increased volume. So Toro is becoming more independent. I mean, retail year to date capture 23 billion, almost 30% growth year on year, but I'm sure we have a lot more to do. We increase our investor base of individuals almost 10% year on year. AAA in the quarter was 6.3 billion. That is a number compatible with the second quarter, and certainly year-on-year growth is above 100. And advisor net funding is almost 4 million in the quarter, and which is quite significant. And NPS remains very high, and everything is earmarked for this major pillar, which means increased investments in the bank. So this slide shows our new positioning with SMEs. You might recall that early this year we launched a new service model where we have experts serving small and mid-sized companies. They are no longer within our stores. We removed them from the stores, and now they are located where it matters the most, which is at our clients' locations. So now they own micro-regions. We have thousands scattered around the country. These experts not only cover their own clients from their own portfolio, they call on their customers a lot more frequently, and this is a new offering that has been made available a few weeks ago. We try to engage, SMEs in a much more significant way, providing them with a reward journey, and also with a very important human factor. And we are just revisiting a project that we call Avançar program. The program provides online and face-to-face content about entrepreneurship, business, etc. And with that, we intend to move towards doubling our size when it comes to serving SMEs and retail companies. And we are making good progress. It's not a linear growth, but we have a view towards doubling the size of this business. And with that now, I would like to call Gustavo to review the numbers, and then I'll come back for the Q&A. Thank you. Thank you, Mario, and good morning, everyone. Now, I will talk about our results. The net interest income, or NII, continues to grow in a quarterly and annual comparison. We grew almost 16%, which reflects the evolution of our strategy for client and market NII. In the quarter, client NII had a good performance. We prioritized more profitable lines and segments, which also resulted in higher spreads in the period. When we look at market NII, there was a better performance yet due to better results from Treasury. We are committed with the long-term sustainable growth, adopting a very diligent risk management and good discipline in terms of optimizing resources. The next slide shows our loan portfolio. In the quarter, there was a slight drop stemming from our discipline because we were seeking for higher profitability.
In market NII, we saw better performance due to higher results from Treasury operations. We are committed to sustainable long-term expansion organization adopting an active risk management, price discipline, and technical rigor in the allocation of resources. On the next slide, we focus on our loan portfolio. In the quarter, we posted a slight reduction stemming from our discipline in the search for greater profitability. We saw growth of almost 11% in retail, while in corporates, we continue to focus on profitability, an approach that has been maintained since the second quarter of 2023. The individual's portfolio grew by 0.8%, with the highlight going to products with highest transactionality, such as cards, which grew by 2.5% in the quarter. Also in cards, we have seen quality growth with a greater concentration in middle and high-income clients. Spending has increased due to the expansion and penetration of the base. As for payroll loans, we have adjusted origination due to pressure on profitability caused by increasing spreads in the interest rate curve and rate caps. On the other hand, the auto loan market is still showing good dynamics. We grew by 4.7% in the quarter, and as mentioned earlier, our portfolios are well positioned in terms of credit quality. In SMEs, we saw an important increase in the portfolio, up 2% in the quarter, with special focus on medium-sized companies. Here, it is worth noting to be prepared to move forward in this segment with quality and at an appropriate pace. Moving on to the next slide, we present our funding performance. We recorded stability in the third quarter, as expected, with dynamic liquidity management and price discipline in our liabilities. We continue to make progress in improving the mix of segments, with individuals growing by 2 percentage points over the last 12 months. We also optimized the mix of funding instruments and costs, with the issuance of subordinated financial bills at the same time as we announced the call of the Tier 1 bond, with settlement scheduled for November. To conclude this slide, the loan-to-deposits ratio remains at one of the lowest historical levels, reaching 93%. I will now comment on the performance of our fees and commissions. Once again, we reached all-time highs this quarter as a result of our revenue diversification strategy, which has been progressing really well. We posted quarterly growth of 3% and annual growth of 13%, with good performance in practically all line items. I'd like to highlight the growth in cards, up 3.2% in the quarter and 14.4% year-to-date. Insurance, current account, and assets all grew in the quarter, not to mention significant year-on-year growth. A relevant point is that the securities brokerage and placement line item, despite a reduction, posts a year-to-date growth of 5%, actually a year-on-year growth of 5% in 2024. In the line item Others, as you can see, the biggest quarterly increase came from the good performance of the savings bonds product. On this slide, we have the quality of our assets. In Q3 2024, we maintained a stable ALL allowance for loan losses, resulting in a cost of risk of 3.7%, with a reduction of 60 basis points in 12 months. NPL formation showed a positive performance, reflecting the better quality of our origination, standing at 1.1%. Due to the better quality of the vintages, the renegotiated portfolio already posts a reduction of almost 5 billion compared with Q3 2023, and we posted a reduction of 130 basis points in relation to the total portfolio last year. On the next slide, we provide details on the performance of our default or delinquency indicators. Our loan granting remains well balanced, and the portfolios are fully adjusted, as I mentioned. Both the short-term and long-term indicators remain practically stable. The higher delinquency of SMEs is partly due to the renegotiated portfolio, as I mentioned in the prior quarter, mainly in E1, the E1 segment, which includes companies with an annual turnover of up to 3 million BRL, and due to additional pressure in the corporate segment due to some cases of court-supervised reorganizations. Controlled provisions and default rates make it possible to absorb these events without major impacts. I'd like to highlight that the short-term indicators are adjusted, suggesting a more positive trend ahead. On the next slide, I will give you more detail on our expenses. We continue to make progress in our quest for efficiency, focusing on cost control. During the quarter, we posted the partial effect of the collective bargaining agreement, with salaries being adjusted by 4.6%, which had an impact on personnel expenses. Increase in administrative expenses is related to the expansion of our business, which is good, and expenses grew less than revenues, thus helping to improve our operating leverage. We saw a sequential improvement in the efficiency ratio, which fell by 3.6 percentage points year-on-year. To conclude the earnings results section, we present our income statement. Year-on-year, we saw a 15% increase in total revenues, driven by both NII and the good performance of our fees and commissions. Provisions remained flat quarter-on-quarter and increased slightly in the annual comparison, and we maintained our strict control over expenses, resulting in a profit of 3.7 billion BRL. This result represents an increase of 10% in the quarter. We ended Q3 of 2024 with growth in profitability, with ROE of 17% and Common Equity Tier 1 of 11%. Finally, I'd like to highlight that we remain focused on the gradual recovery of our results, which have evolved in line with our expectations. Our goal is long-term sustainability with solid and consistent results. That concludes my part of the presentation, and I give the floor to Mario for his closing remarks. Thank you, Gustavo. I'd just like to stress, and then we'll have the Q&A, like to stress 5 main takeaways that we kind of covered during the presentation. Again, principality, meaning being the most present bank in the lives of our clients. So when I travel around Brazil, I try to talk to clients and non-clients, and this is the message. I need to be the bank, the most present in your life. It all starts with the client, and we design a strategy backwards. This principality agenda only happens if we are totally embraced with technology. Earlier today, I was talking with the employees of the bank in our internal meeting. Technology doesn't deserve 1 or 2 slides. Technology is absolutely key. It is business. It is client. And if a big bank, multi-channel bank like Santander, does not understand that, we are not going to post the expected growth. Third, through technology and through the human experience, we want to create value, deliver value to clients in the client's perception. And this applies to investments, cards, how we support them in non-financial themes, which are more and more relevant in our offering, and with a hyper-personalized experience, which is more and more powerful when clients will feel unique in their conversation with us. They'll say what they need just once. And sometimes I have the data to anticipate the demand from that client, and I can bring them a solution before they even run into a problem. We want to grow, privileging the relationship as a whole. We want to migrate more and more through simplification with the offering, with technology. We want to have complete relationships with the client, and that's how we'll allocate our capital more and more selectively, more surgical, aiming to grow, but also to grow profitability as the main focus, as we have shown. And we are working to continue to deliver this in the coming quarters until we get to a level which is much higher than the current one. And we'll continue to work to get more. So to move before the Q&A, these are good results to communicate. We have quarterly growth, annual growth, a very clean quarter. We're very happy with the progress we have and with what's coming ahead. So I'd like to invite Gustavo for the Q&A. Camila, over to you. Thank you, Mario and Gustavo, for the presentation. And we will now start the question and answer session. From now on, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. Again, you only need to click on the raise hand icon at the bottom of the screen. We will answer questions in the language in which they are asked. We kindly urge that each analyst asks only one question so that everyone has a chance to participate. We'll start now with XP Investment with Matheus Guimarães. Good morning, Matheus. Welcome.
Matheus, a gente não está te escutando.
Matheus, we cannot hear you.
Ainda não.
Still no sound from you, Matheus.
Ainda não.
Sorry, cannot hear you. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me better? Yes, now the sound is perfect. Okay, I apologize. Thank you. Congrats on the results, and thank you for the opportunity to ask questions. I think the Q3 is materialization of a lot of the things you have been talking about in past quarters. When we look to the future, and considering a more uncertain macro scenario, what can we expect in terms of growth, particularly in the loan book? I think we'd like to have some color regarding that. Thank you. Thank you for the question. I'll start and Gustavo can complement. What we did this quarter was we kind of have the portfolio skidding sideways with a slight decrease, but we can see the dynamics portfolio by portfolio where we accelerate, where we think there's a marginal profitability, and where we have marginal cross-selling to be obtained. In some portfolios, there are one-time off effects in some companies. It's a case of one specific name in the wholesale segment, an old case, but still the corporate's portfolio would have dropped. So I think what's very clear in Q3 is that there was a balancing of our capital, which continues to grow. We're moving the direction of the portfolios where we can have marginal profitability in the credit operation itself or in cross-selling. Looking forward, we'll do exactly that, but in a more surgical way, in a more thorough way. I'm going to give you some examples just to make things more tangible. We grew a lot in recent years. We gained bank share in payroll loans. We still love payroll loans, but they have different portfolios. We are very big in private payroll loans. Perhaps we are the largest in the market. We have everything to grow well in the private. And it's profitable. But in the public setting, in INSS, the payroll loan is not as profitable as we want. It's not compatible with what we aim. So in a nutshell, to answer your question, which is good, we'll continue to grow as a whole, but some portfolios will tend to be flat or even drop slightly. Perhaps the INSS payroll loan is this case. The cost of origination through external channels and the cap rate, now that the Selic rate increased, the rate did not increase. So the INSS payroll loans, particularly through external channels, it doesn't pay off. And cross-selling in the INSS payroll loan is not the best cross-selling of all. So I can reinvest that capital in a much more effective way in an auto loan book, which is growing, as you saw, 20% year on year, and have no advantage in decelerating auto loans. SMEs, there are many sub-portfolios, but I continue to want to grow in SMEs. I talked about our ambition of doubling in 2 years. It's not doubling the portfolio per se. It's growing the business itself. And it's a cross-sellable business where I can get a lot of fees and a lot of investments. And corporates. Corporates is a good question. We'll be selective. The good news is, as we were very strict in marginal profitability in the last year and a half in the corporate segment, our portfolio has been constantly dropping the margin in corporates. So we haven't lost revenue, so we're able to cross-sell for corporates more and more. I'm producing more with the same RWA in corporates. I'm producing more with less RWA. And when I have an opportunity, when the capital markets changes, when the competition in corporates becomes healthier in terms of price, I'll be much lighter to expand again. So it's not a credit appetite theme or capital allocation. It's about a disciplined approach. I hope I have answered your question. It is super clear. Thank you very much, Mario.
Nós vamos agora para a próxima pergunta.
Next question.
Com o Yuri Fernandes,
With
de JP
Yuri
Morgan.
Fernandes
Oi,
with
Yuri.
JP Morgan.
Camila, bom
Hello,
dia,
Camila.
Mário,
Gustavo,
parabéns pela trajetória de melhora
congratulations
de
on
REIT de
this
vocês.
journey
Eu
of
queria focar um
improvement.
pouquinho mais no
I'd like to
equity de
focus
vocês
on
ali
equity
no balanço.
at the balance sheet.
Esse TRI a
In
gente
this
viu que
quarter,
teve
we saw that there
impacto, acho
was
que de
an impact of
1.300 já líquido de
1.3
imposto,
billion net of
de alguns
taxes
casos bem
of some
antigos,
very
né?
old
Tô falando aqui
cases.
de Banespa,
I'm
que
talking
é
about
de
Banespa.
uma briga de PLR de
This
aposentados
is
aqui.
a fight
Eu
for
queria
the
entender, assim,
retirees,
se isso é o que está
PLR.
trazendo o capital para
Is
o call de
this what
vocês,
bring your Tier
essa
1
quedazinha de 20
capital
bips?
to
Primeira
post
pergunta
this slight
aí.
drop of
E se vocês
20
puderem dar um
basis
contexto do
points?
que é
And if
isso, se a
you
gente
could
deveria
give us
ver
the
outros
context,
casos antigos
should we
assim
expect other
impactando
old
o
cases
patrimônio? Eu só consigo
impacting
lembrar talvez
shareholders'
do PIS e
equity?
COFINS,
I
que
can
foi o
only
mais
remember
recente,
PIS
mas
and
só para
COFINS,
entender um
which
pouquinho
was
assim, se a gente
more
deveria
recent.
ver
I just want to get a
talvez essas
sense whether we
surpresas
should have
em PL,
more of
porque
these
fora isso, acho que
surprises
no
in
PNL
profit loss,
foi
because the
tudo muito
rest in the
bom, né?
P&L,
É só essa
everything
questão
is
do
nice and
que me chama um
good.
pouquinho mais a atenção.
But this is the
Obrigado.
only point that drew my attention. Thank you, Yuri. Thank you for always looking at capital, making comments on capital. It's the level of diligence that we like. So thank you very much for challenging us. It's an excellent question. Well, this case, to give names, this is a case of Santander Banesprav, which is our pension vehicle at the time of Banespa with an association called Afabes. This is a case of 1996, Yuri. That's when I joined the market. Many of you weren't active at that time, so it's a 28-year-old case. And here, Yuri, well, of course, justice takes its time. We're coping with that as things went by. But in recent years, these cases were being solved. We could have simply followed with the provision due to these decisions. But again, we made a decision which is allowed in a bank with an organic result and organic capital that allows us to. And we preferred in second quarter to third quarter. We designed the agreement in the second quarter and executed it in Q3, an agreement with this association where we offer a financial settlement, a material one for each one of them, in a total gross of 2.7 billion BRL. We worked a lot on the agreement, and once the agreement was signed, they worked with the Association of Lawyers to bring people on board, because people have to join the agreement. We got 90% of the people joining, which is quite high, because we're talking about older people who are not always accessible, and the fact that they joined led to 2.7 billion, coming down to about 2.4 billion, which in net terms give us the capital allocation that you mentioned. So in a nutshell, it's a very old case, and we kind of wanted to get it done, get it solved, rather than leave it in accrual for the coming years. In UD, we also eliminate a risk that cases to be settled in the future could have higher amounts. In a way, we kind of contain and we kind of limit the loss to an acceptable level. We're following this up close, and then we decided to make this decision of coming to an agreement. And in Q3, that's when the people joined, and payment happened in October. And we are funding that in Select. So the money is coming back to us in investments. Gustavo can give you the more technical terms. We can do an offline follow-up, but this has to do with a post-employment benefit. So this has a specific accounting line item, and it allows us to be recognized in the OCI equivalent, the Brazilian equivalent OCI. And this was debated at length with the internal auditor, external auditor, globally. We're very comfortable, and we discussed it with the regulators. I think that this means a comprehensive resolution. We had 100% of people joining. What about the 10%? 10% will continue in accrual, but it is a much lower materiality. We have a provision for that. So we don't expect, in this case, anything material. And we haven't got any other material cases, which was the second part of your question, that could pop up. And that would entail decisions in the coming quarters. Now, this was an old case. It could be higher than those billions, and we are coming to a solution to it, posting it in the balance sheet because we could, and we prefer to do it now. But clear, thank you, Mário. Now we have a question from Safra with Daniel Vaz.
Bom dia, Camila. Bom dia,
Good
Mário,
morning,
Gustavo.
Camila.
Obrigado pela oportunidade de fazer
Gustavo,
perguntas.
thank you for the
Parabéns pela
opportunity to
trajetória do
ask
seu
questions.
resultado.
Congrats on the
Olhando para sua
results.
carteira, assim, a
Looking
parte
at your
principalmente de trajetória,
portfolio, looking at the
você tem o consumer
trajectory, you have a
finance ganhando
consumer
cada vez mais
finance gaining
relevância
more and
como
more
todo, né?
relevance
Então,
as a
a
whole.
financeira ganha parte
So,
disso. E
consumer
aliado a
finance
essa
is
trajetória, a
improving.
gente tem a
Coupled with
4966, a
that, we
regulação que deve
have
entrar agora em janeiro.
4966, a
Ele
regulation
deve
that
trazer
should
uma necessidade de
take
provisão maior
start taking into
em
effect in
originação
January,
desses
and
financiamentos
it
de
should lead
veículos,
to
né? Então, você
greater
tem um loss given
origination
default
of
que é
auto
majorado
loans.
por conta de um ativo de recuperação que você traz a valor presente, né? Então,
So,
como que vocês têm
how are
trabalhado, né,
you
com esse
working
impacto?
with
Queria
this
entender
impact of Law
o impacto no seu nível
4966? I'd like
recorrente
to
de provisão
understand the impact
e,
on
assim, se o
your
seu capital
recurring level
principal,
of
que hoje está um
provision.
pouquinho abaixo dos
And
pares ali
Tier
em
1 capital
11%,
is a little
se
bit
isso tem
below
algum
your
hit que a
peers,
gente deve trabalhar
11%.
para o começo do ano que vem. Obrigado.
Anything we should think about next year?
Eu vou começar e aqui levanto a bola para o Gustavo.
I'll start.
Daniel, obrigado pela pergunta.
And thank you for the question, Gustavo. Another excellent theme for us to cover. We are not communicating to the market the magnitude. Of course, we've been working for a long time, for many, many months now on this. This is not just technical work of our accounting team and provisions modeling, but Gustavo, myself, and many other officers are involved. In saying that there is no impact would be to underestimate the evolution of the regulation. There will obviously be some impact. We don't expect the impact to be material, though. If we get the full year 2025, we don't expect this to be a CT1 material impact to affect our payout ability, because that's implicit in your question. There is an impact, yes, but we don't expect this adjustment in CT1 to be material to the point of impacting our ability to have payout next year. I'd like to ask Gustavo to speak about consumer finance, but this is undoubtedly an important theme in the whole industry. We are looking at this up close. At a macro level, we'll do what needs to be done. We'll evolve our modeling. But we imagine that along 2025, this will be absorbed. Gustavo? From the standpoint of the portfolio, it applies to consumer finance and to all portfolios. For many years, we've been operating with IFRS 9, and now we'll apply 4966. And our decision process of making decisions in terms of loan is based on all aspects of the rules that we operate by. We don't have any surprises, and perhaps that's the angle of your question. We wouldn't have surprises in terms of what we are originating in consumer finance applying 4966. Since we use IFRS, we know practically the impact of 4966 today. So in our decision making for portfolios, for all our portfolios, and we'll do this for all portfolios, we have a portfolio client and product view. So we have what we expect in terms of performance based on the rules that we know, the standards we know, and we use a lot of our IFRS 9 experience. I think that that's kind of the angle of your question, but we're applying this already in our decision making. Regarding technical rigor and better capital allocation, that's a variable that we have been already using for a couple of quarters. It doesn't change our modus operandi, We don't have to adapt. We already adapted. Overall, for all portfolios, this is it. And it is what Mario mentioned. This is a new standard. 4966 is different than the previous one. And naturally, this difference brings more provisioning. 4966 entails more provisioning than 2682. And we are going to have an adjustment in shareholders' equity.
Fechado, obrigado pela
Okay,
resposta.
thank you for the answer.
Próximo participante é o Mário Pierre.
Next question,
Bank of
Mario
America.
Pierre with Bank of
Mário,
America.
pode prosseguir.
Mario?
Bom dia, pessoal.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to ask questions.
Mário, eu queria entender um pouco assim.
Mario, I'd like to understand the macro scenario in Brazil in recent months got worse.
A curva
We see the future
futura
curve
continua
that continues to
subindo,
increase,
tem mais incerteza.
more
Eu queria
uncertainties.
entender,
So let's
então, como é que você está
understand.
vendo dois segmentos
How do you see
especial,
two
o de pequenas e médias
specific
empresas
segments?
e
Small,
o de baixa
medium-sized
renda.
companies
Acho que
and
vocês
low
falaram muito pouco de
income
baixa
clients. You
renda.
spoke
No
very little
passado
about
era um
low
tópico
income.
que vocês
In the past, it was a
discutiam
topic that you
potencial de
discussed as
oportunidade,
a potential
e agora
opportunity,
não ouvi
but
muito de
I
baixa
didn't hear
renda.
you
Eu
talk a
queria
lot about
entender
the
se a
low
estratégia
income
ali
segment.
muda
Is the
e nas
strategy
pequenas e médias
changing?
empresas,
And for SMEs,
como é que você está vendo a
how do you
competição
see
e seu apetite de
competition
crédito para o
and
segmento?
your credit
Obrigado.
appetite in that segment? Thank you.
Obrigado, Mário. Não,
Thank you,
ótima,
Mario.
ótima pergunta.
Excellent question.
A gente falou menos de
All right.
massivos ou de baixa
We
renda.
spoke less
por
about the
escolher
retail
simplesmente
market
esses
and low
tópicos
income
para
because we
apresentar
just
a
had
apresentação,
to
mas obviamente
choose the
continua sendo um grande
topics in the
foco.
presentation.
A
But
gente não
of
está
course, it
saindo
remains
nem
a big
diminuindo
focus for us.
de
We're not
forma
leaving
material
that
o
segment,
nosso de
or
baixa renda. O que a gente
neither
está
are we
fazendo
materially
é um trabalho
reducing
contínuo
the
de
work with
de-risking
low
nesse
income, but we're
portfólio
doing
como um todo, mas
continuous
nesse
work
portfólio em
for
particular, Mário.
de-risking in all
E eu diria
portfolios,
que hoje a
in
gente
particular
está
that one, Mario.
separando aqui as safras
And
antigas
splitting the
em que a gente
old
faz o de-risking
vintages
e
where
as
we
safras mais
have
novos dos últimos
de-risking
2
and
anos
the
principalmente.
newer
Eu
vintages
diria
in
que
the
a gente
last
está
2
com a
years
base de
mainly. I
clientes
would
de
say
baixa
that we
renda que a
have
gente quer
a
estar.
low income client base
A gente
that
continua,
is
claro,
what we want.
numa expansão
Of
da
course,
franquia, a
we
gente
continue
continua
to
atraindo
expand
clientes
the
novos,
franchise. We
cada vez mais
continue to
dados, cada vez
attract
mais
new clients
uso de
with more and more
tecnologia.
data,
A
using
nossa
technology
agregação de
more and
clientes novos
more.
está sendo cada vez
So
mais
we're
assertiva.
adding new
E sem
clients in
dúvida
a
o
more
nosso crescimento
assertive way. And
passa pela baixa
undoubtedly, our
renda. Agora,
growth
quando eu
includes
falo de
low
ser
income
bastante
segment.
criterioso em como eu
And when
aloco
I speak
capital, cruzado
about
com a
being
pergunta
thorough
de
in
um tempo
capital
atrás,
allocation and
o
careful
INSS, o
capital
consignado
allocation,
INSS tem bastante baixa renda nele.
INSS, payroll loan,
Perceber que
have a
minha
lot of low
rentabilidade
income. And if I
marginal
see that
daquele
my
consignado
marginal
INSS para
profitability
baixa
in that
renda não é
INSS,
adequada e a minha
that
capacidade
low
de
income is not
cross-sell
adequate,
tampouco é muito
and that
grande, porque
my
o limite de renda
cross-selling
disponível daquele
capability
cliente
is not
é
that
baixo,
big because
eu
they
vou fazer
have
menos
very
disso
little income
no
to
futuro
spend.
próximo. É
I'll
menos
do
até
less
por
of that
título de
in
crédito, Mário,
foreseeable
que é
future. It's
mais por
less
pequenos de capital.
related to
Então, eu
credit
diria que o nosso foco não
appetite
tem
and more
em rendas
related to
massivas ou
capital
baixa renda.
allocation. So
E o
our
nosso foco em
focus
pequenas
in
e médias
mass
empresas, ele vai
retail
estar calibrado por
and
um
our
overlay
focus
de apetite
in
de crédito, que a
on
gente não mudou
SMEs will be
materialmente nesses anos.
calibrated by
Então,
our
faz
appetite.
2 anos e alguns meses
For
que a gente
about
implementou
2
todos os
years,
ajustes
we have
principais que a
implemented
gente
all
queria
the main
fazer de
adjustments
apetite de
we
crédito.
meant to do in
De lá para
terms
cá
of
foi
credit
calibragem normal
appetite.
dos
And after
bloggers,
that
de
is
ficar
the
testando e
regular
ajustando, que é
calibration,
redução normal de banco.
fine-tuning
Mas
as we
ajustes
normally
materiais a gente
do
não
in
fez
our
nenhum.
bank, but no
Então a gente está
material
com apetite num
adjustments.
nível
So we have appetite
compatível com os últimos anos,
in a
ou
level
seja, mais
compatible with recent
conservador, eu
years.
diria, do
We
que
tend to be more
o ambicioso, algo
conservative
assim.
than
A gente não
ambitious
pretende
or
mudar esse
aggressive.
apetite.
We don't
E a
intend
derivada
to
seguinte
change that
é onde eu
appetite.
rentabilizo
The
melhor
next
o
question
capital
is,
que eu tenho.
where do I
Então,
have
eu
more
continuo
profitability
voltado
with
a
the
crescer em
capital that I
massivos,
have?
continuo.
I continue
Menos
to
com
grow in mass
produtos em que eu
retail,
rentabilizo
yes,
pouco e gero
less
pouco
with
cross-sell,
products that are
e
less
mais
profitable
dentro do
and
apetite
less
de crédito que eu
cross-sellable.
tenho,
And
com
with my
produtos que
credit
trazem
appetite, I want to
mais
grow
relação
with products that
transacional
bring me
e, portanto, mais
more
principalidade junto disso,
transactions, more
comissões, junto disso,
principality, more
funding
fees
barato,
and
depósito barato.
commissions,
Então, em rendas
and
massivas, a grande
cheap
agenda
deposits.
é o dueto cartão e cheque.
So it's this
Ah, mas isso tem
duet of checks
potencial,
and
né,
cards.
custo de crédito mais alto do que o
This has a
consignado, do que o
potential
imobiliário. É
higher
verdade.
cost of
Mas
risk
ajustado
than SMEs. Yes, it
ao
is true,
quanto eu
but
consigo produzir de
adjusted to
spread
how
nessas
much I can
carteiras,
produce of
quanto de
spread in these
transacional eu trago,
portfolios,
portanto,
and the
spread, vamos dizer,
transactionality,
ampliado,
the
contra o custo de
broader
crédito, dentro do
spread,
apetite que eu tenho, a gente está bastante
considering
seguro
my
que
credit
focar nos produtos
appetite,
com relação que
we
geram relação transacional
have peace
é o
of
caminho,
mind
é o caminho
that
correto,
this is
inclusive em rendas
the right
massivas. De
way
novo,
to go,
dentro de um apetite de
including
risco que
in
eu não alterei.
mass
Isso
income.
vale o mesmo, de certa forma, para pequenas e médias
Mass
empresas.
income offerings.
E
The
mais para
same applies
médias
to
empresas, a gente está tendo
SMEs and
aumento de
particularly
RJ bastante importante esse
medium-sized
ano, possivelmente é o ano recorde de RJ.
companies.
E
This year, we probably
nas
had
high Ps
a
nossas
record
aqui,
of
a gente está tendo
court-supervised
mais RJ em termos de meses do que
reorganizations. We're
sociais,
having
mas
more of those than in the past. This brings a delta element in the over 90 society that has an impact. Nothing to worry about, but we are going to look at this. We have to manage portfolios of small companies that's doing well, and then we'll have to approve name by name. We'll look at the sector, the leverage of the companies. More leveraged companies concern us more, with interest rates going to 11, 12, perhaps 13. We have to think about that because they're very leveraged and for a long time. So that's a point of attention for companies in general. Less with individuals, because individuals pay high interest rates anyway. Even if the Selic rate increases, this will not increase the all-in cost of individuals. I hope I have covered all of the points. Thank you.
A pergunta agora é do Pedro Leduc.
Next question
do
from
Itaú
Pedro
BBA.
Leduc with
Oi,
Itaú
Pedro, bom
BBA.
dia.
Pedro, good morning.
Bom dia a todos.
Good morning, everyone.
Parabéns pelo resultado também,
Congratulations
Mário.
on the results.
Duas rápidas.
Two
Primeiro,
quick questions.
serviços.
First,
Eu perguntei também
services.
já no último
I asked
call
about this
e
in
era
the
esperado que
prior
fosse dar uma
calls.
arrefecida e continua muito forte, né? Dois
And this
dígitos no ano.
continues at a
Se puder
two-digit
elaborar
level.
pouquinho mais por trás
Perhaps you
disso
can
e o
give
que a
us
gente
more
pode
color
ver
on
para o ano
that
que
and
vem.
what we can
E aí,
expect
voltando ao
next year.
racional
And
de
then
crescer
going
de
back to the
forma
rationale of
eficiente
growing
em capital,
efficiently
alocação ótima
in
de
optimal
RWA,
capital
ficou bem
allocation
claro
and
isso para
RWA.
corporates.
That became very clear for
E aí eu queria
corporates.
transbordar isso um pouquinho
And
para o
I'd
consumer
like
finance,
to
né, que aqui 4,
extend that
5%
to
de
consumer
crescimento de
finance. 4,
carteira muito
5%
forte.
portfolio growth
Se
is
você está
quite
vendo aqui
strong.
também mais oportunidades para continuar
And do
crescendo
you
nesse
see more
ritmo
opportunities to
nos
continue
próximos
to grow at the
trimestres?
same pace
Obrigado.
in the coming quarters? Thank you.
Legal, Pedro, obrigado.
Thank you,
Não,
Pedro.
ótimas perguntas.
Excellent
Falando rápido aqui de
questions.
comissões,
Very
serviço
briefly
como um todo,
on fees and commissions and service
já
as a
algum tempo, eu
whole.
diria que alguns
For a
anos, eu
while
tenho falado com
now, for some
vocês
years,
do nosso
I
foco em
have spoken
diversificação
about our
do macro
focus on
portfólio de negócios.
diversification of
Isso
the
é sim
macro
criar uma diversificação
diversification
de
of the
crédito, mas é
business. This means
construir
credit
business muito mais potente
diversification,
de
but also
comissões,
business a much more
relativamente à
powerful
base de RWAs
business
que a gente sempre teve.
based on
Enfim,
RWA,
comparativamente a alguns dos nossos grandes pares,
comparing with some of
como
our
o que você
great
representa, Pedro, a
peers,
gente tem
as the one you
historicamente
represent,
índice de
Pedro.
comissões por
Historically,
RWA
we have
mais baixo. Isso,
a
obviamente, é um
rate of
diagnóstico
commissions
fácil de
per
fazer, não tão fácil
RWA, which
de
is lower.
fixar.
It's a
É um
diagnosis that
trabalho
is easy
consistente
to
de
make.
foco, de
It's consistent
direcionamento, de
work of
incentivos,
focus,
mas não basta ser aquele
direction, and
incentivo do sprint
incentives.
da rede
It's not
comercial
just
que
sprint
você faz uma campanha com uma
incentives in
viagem
our
e depois
network
passa.
of
Tem que
agencies
ser
when
algo
you
de
run a
fato estrutural
campaign
na
and then it's
organização,
over.
né? E são
No,
muitas
it needs to be
respostas. Então, eu
structural.
gosto mais do que o
Do you have any
crescimento em
answers?
si, de
More
ver
than
que ele é
growth itself, I
bastante
like to
diversificado
see
entre
that
várias
growth
linhas.
is
Sempre, claro, tem
diversified
algumas se
among
destacam
many
mais.
line
Esse
items.
TRI teve
Some,
uma
of course,
parte
stand
negativa,
out.
mas
This
obviamente a gente
quarter,
tem uma
capital
franquia
markets
potente, a
was
gente teve
negative, but
talvez
we have a
menos
powerful
transações no mercado de
franchise.
capitais
We
nos
have
últimos
fewer
passos, de novo,
transactions in
pura
capital
disciplina de
markets,
capital
but
e não
it's
querer entrar
pure
naqueles que
capital
estavam apertados
discipline. We didn't
demais.
want to get into those tight
Para mim, o foco de
situations.
comissões, Pedro, é
So to me,
ter
in terms of
várias
fees
linhas de
and
comissões
commissions,
que
Pedro,
passam
it's
de 1
about having
bilhão, a
many
gente já tem
lines of
27,
fees and commissions.
e as contas de
We have
alguns
more than
BIs, ano,
7.
cartões e seguros, por exemplo,
And
tem que
cards and
aumentar. Então, a gente teve
insurance
bom crescimento de
are
consórcio no TRI,
lines they need to
desanualizado,
increase.
2
We
dígitos.
had good
Eu tô
sale
feliz?
of
Não,
consortium
não
the
tô,
quarter,
porque a gente
2
tem que
digits.
pensar
Am I
num negócio de
happy?
consórcio
No,
que em
because we have
poucos
to
anos é o
think about
dobro. E esse eu falo
consortiums
dobro,
that
o
will
dobro de
double
número
in a
mesmo,
couple of
de
years,
resultado
doubling in
material. Então, a gente tem um
numbers, in
negócio de
material
1 bi de
results. We have a
consórcio,
business of
e se
1
ele não chegar em
billion in
alguns anos, e não
consortium.
pode ser 10, a um
In a
negócio de
couple
2
of
bi,
years, we
não
should
como
get to 2
patamar final, mas
billion.
um próximo
Not as
degrau,
a final level,
eu, sem
but as
dúvida,
the
não
next
vou estar
step.
satisfeito. Então,
I
pode
will
me
not
procurar
be
pelo
happy.
consórcio,
So
por
you
exemplo.
can
Então,
put pressure
no
on
fundo, é
me
pegar essas grandes
for
linhas de
consortiums.
comissões e
So we have
fazer
to
elas
get these
crescerem
big
de
line
forma que
items
cada
of
uma delas fique
commissions
mais
and fees
material,
and
mas a
make
agenda
them
por trás
grow.
disso é um foco
But the
bastante
agenda
disciplinado
behind
nosso
it
em
is a
medir, e eu falo
disciplined focus on
explicitamente isso, medir
measurement,
FIIs por RWA como um dos
measuring
grandes KPIs do banco. Então, a gente
fees by
precisa, a
RWA.
gente sistematiza isso ao longo
We
desse ano,
systematize
e a partir
that
daqui a gente
during
vai
this year,
continuar de forma
and after
ainda
that,
mais
we'll continue
clínica, eu diria,
to be even more
focando nesse
surgical,
KPI e buscando
focusing on this
convergir com os best
KPI,
practices
trying
que
to
tem no mercado
converge
e
with the
também fora do
best
Brasil.
practices of the market in Brazil and abroad.
O tema da financeira.
Oh, consumer
levanto a bola, o Gustavo
finance.
complementa, que é um negócio
I'll
que, inclusive,
start
tá
and
sendo
Gustavo will complement because this business is under his
olha para a
management.
financeira,
We look at
apesar de
consumer
financeira ser o
finance, although
clássico
consumer finance
monoproduto, vamos dizer
is a
assim, é
classical
uma empresa
mono
separada
product.
nossa,
It's
moeda de
actually a
lucros,
separate
e é de fato
company,
tocada de forma
and this
bastante
is run
integrada, mas bastante
in an
independente.
integrated
A
way,
gente tem
but
uma
also
liderança
independently.
impecável ali.
We have
Mas o
impeccable
que a gente fez bem
leadership
nos
there.
últimos anos foi
But
também
what
olhar a
we
financeira
did well in
beyond,
recent
Pedro,
years is to
o que o
look
próprio
at the
negócio
consumer
traz.
finance beyond what the business itself brings us. The business itself, as Gustavo will say, stands on its own. I could have no cross-selling with the bank. I could not bring almost 600,000 clients as active checking account holders of the bank. But the business is very profitable, considering the risk appetite that we defined in the past. And given our penetration, we are in thousands of dealers. We originate 80 to 90% of everything that the market sees in auto loans. And we choose to perform according to our appetite. Gustavo? Well, Pedro, exactly. We choose to do 21, 22. We measure contract by contract. We make decisions by contract, and we follow up contract by contract all the performances with the best metrics. And going back to the previous question and using the provisions metrics. So performance continues to do well. What we are projecting is confirming. We'll expand to the point that we maintain performance. We would not like to reduce performance in terms of profitability. So we believe that we have room for growth, but we'll grow according to demand for this risk profile and with the characteristic that we are working with. Is there a possibility to expand even more? Yes, but then we have credit performance. And it makes less sense to us. But there's a lot of demand in the auto loan market, and we are operating at a comfortable level. And we are aiming a profitability which is quite interesting. And Pedro, the marginal profitability, not that we are looking at, or that we are already having consumer finance, but no cross-selling is already compatible with the big ROA that we want to have for the whole ROE that we want to have with the whole bank. So consumer finance is pushing us forward and not backward. So we have discipline, contract by contract, as Gustavo mentioned. And this is the benchmark of what we are doing for all of the other portfolios of the bank. Clear, thank you very much.
A gente vai agora com o Thiago Batista.
Thiago Batista, now with UBS.
Bom dia, Thiago.
Good morning, Thiago.
Bom dia, Camila. Bom dia a todos. Estão me ouvindo?
Can you all hear me?
Vamos
All
lá.
right.
A minha pergunta, Mário, você e o Gustavo já comentaram no
Mario, you
call a
and Gustavo
importância da
mentioned during the call the
rentabilidade do
importance
banco.
of profitability
No
for the
passado,
bank.
no passado, acho que no trimestre passado, aí saiu uma
I
matéria
think
de
that in
jornal
the
recentemente
past
indicando que o
quarter,
ROI poderia
there's news
voltar
that
ao nível de
ROE could go
20%
back
no
to the
médio
level of
prazo.
20% in the
Pergunta aqui,
mid
quais são as
run.
alavancas
My
mais
question is, what are
importantes
the
desse
most
retorno,
important
sair dos 16,
leverages
17 que
for
a gente
this
tem hoje
return
e
to
atingir essa
leave
ambição ali ao
17,
redor de 20?
16 and
E
reach
se de
the
alguma
ambition
maneira
of
a
around
Selic
20?
nesse novo
And
patamar,
Selic
que não seja 12,
rate,
13, qual
this
que vai
new
ser,
level, 12,
se
13, I
isso
don't know which one it will be.
atrapalha
Will
esse
this get in
processo
the
de
way
levar o
of
ROI
this
do banco
process of
ao redor de 20?
increasing the ROE of the bank to around 20?
Não, Thiago, ótima pergunta. Eu vou começar
Excellent
até pelo
question,
segundo
Tiago.
pedaço,
I'll start with the
e
second
ajuda-
part
me
of the
ajuda a fechar no
question because it
primeiro.
will help me answer
A
the
Selic
first
mais
part.
alta ajuda ou
A higher
atrapalha?
Selic,
Atrapalha.
does it help
Então,
or get in the
para
way?
ser
It gets in the way, to be
a gente
practical,
tem
okay? It
historicamente,
hurts.
vocês, né, seguem o banco
Historically,
há bastante tempo,
when you've been
a gente
following
tem
the
uma
bank for a long
sensibilidade na
time,
margem negativa para
we are
a subida de juros,
sensitive
dado o custo de
to
carregar nosso
interest
portfólio alto e
interest
principalmente
rates
o fato de que
increasing because we have a high
historicamente
portfolio.
a
And
gente fez
historically,
toda a nossa produção
our
da
whole
PF, que é pré-fixada,
origination for
numa
individuals,
base
which is prefixed,
fundeada sem
was in a
hedge, né?
base
Então, é assim que a gente,
that is
por
not hedged.
anos ou décadas,
This is
tocou.
how we
Então, na
have
prática, o
worked
juro
for
sobe,
decades.
você tem custo de carrego
So
maior, isso é percebido
we have a
na
carryover
margem com o
cost,
mercado.
which
E
is
quando
higher
sobe muito
if the
rápido, como
interest
aconteceu
rates
aí em
increase.
21,
And if they
22,
increase
isso
really
aconteceu.
fast, as in 2021,
Na
22,
margem,
we
então,
saw what
tem
happened.
delta
So
custo
in
de
the
carrego, na
margin,
prática, do
that there is a
back book, como a
delta
gente chama, né, da
in the
produção
back book
histórica aí
practice,
e do portfólio
historical
alto.
origination,
Daqui para
and the
frente,
current
a
portfolio.
gente tem
Looking
buscado e vai
forward,
continuar buscando
we'll continue
neutralizar mais e mais
to
esse
have
movimento, porque a gente quer ter,
this
eu já
movement
comentei isso
more
em
and more.
situações passadas, a gente quer trazer mais previsibilidade
We want to
e
have more
volatilidade do
predictability,
resultado.
less
Uma das,
volatility
talvez,
in the results.
volatilidades ou
Perhaps one of
imprevisibilidades
the
históricas que a gente tinha era
uncertainties or
associada a
unpredictability
essa
historically
posição long
is
juros
associated to
bastante
this
estrutural que a gente
long
sempre teve. Então,
position in
a gente vai
interest
na
rates, which
margem,
is very
Thiago,
structural.
buscar
So in
fazer mais
NII, will try to manage this balance between assets and liabilities, trying to neutralize over time, so that the interest rates increasing or reducing will have a smaller impact. I hope that this will make it easier for analysts and investors to understand where Santander is going in the coming years. Now, speaking about profitability, we have a detractor of my profitability recovery because of the Selic rate, which I will try to neutralize as much as possible, as I just mentioned. But what are the main drivers? It's a wrap-up of what we said during the presentation and during the questions. We'll continue to be disciplined, focusing on the simple ratio, fees over RWA, which I mentioned in Pedro's question. And another fundamental driver is the floating funding, what we call conta max, the money that is invested at low rates. And this floating, this transactional deposits, the ratio of that over RWA reinforces my argument that credit is important, has to be well priced, it has to be worth our while. But it is worthwhile even when I can have more fees and commissions and cheap liabilities for the bank. The main levers are commissions, funding, and pricing, which is more clinical. Credit has its role of an expanded portfolio of 60 billion. This portfolio, of course, needs to continue to grow, but when we run this portfolio, we have to price it better. Every 0.10 is worth a lot. Every 0.15 is worth even more. We put all of that together, we capitalize on it, and we will get to a higher level of ROE, coupled with a very strict spending control, cost control. We've been doing this, but we can be even more efficient, given the franchise as it is, the technology on board, and the technology we're embedding in the next 2 years. We'll try to be even more efficient in terms of expenses, and we have to control our loan renting with better vintages, which we're doing. We're showing it. We need to continue to do it, and the crocodile jaw will increase in terms of what I gain at the top with quality and what I pay as expenses, as provisions and others. And this crocodile jaw expanding will take us in the coming years to a level of profitability. As I mentioned in that interview that you mentioned the press. Thank you. Next question.
Brian Flores,
analyst with Citibank. Brian, hello.
Olá, Camila.
Hello, Camila, Mario, Gustavo, thank you for the opportunity to ask questions. A follow-up question, which I thought was very interesting.
Acho que em algum ponto, talvez, da narrativa,
perhaps at some point of the narrative, it seemed that the ROE improvement would come perhaps with more risk-taking in the individuals.
Acho que a mensagem está ficando talvez pouco mais, eu vou falar assim, conservadora, pode ser, muito focada na disciplina, em termos de, como você falou, de alocação da capital. Então, eu só queria talvez só confirmar se o que a gente deveria ver para frente, talvez crescimento da carteira expandida um pouco menor, como você falou, aquelas alavancas virando talvez um pouco mais relevante daqui para frente, seja a precificação, comissões,
pricing, fees and commissions. Excellent, Brian. Although we are not providing a formal guidance, we don't provide a guidance in Brazil. The group does that for everyone. But I guess that in terms of direction, you and all analysts and investors on this call could expect that, given this surgical management of capital allocation, because we have a capital base which is quite large, an expanded portfolio of almost 700 billion, so we have a lot to work with to extract more fees and commissions, deposits, and better prices in the credit NII. We want to continue to grow the portfolio, yes, but how am I going to grow it? In 2 digits. In some of the portfolios, I'll potentially reduce. I mentioned the INSS payroll loan. In the next quarters, most likely I will reduce that, and it's all right. But in practice, we'll have the loan book grow growing
mais parecido com mid-single digit do que
at a level similar
single
to mid-single
como
digit.
eventualmente o mercado vai crescer. Mas, de novo, isso
But
derivado de uma
again,
disciplina
this
de
is
capital
deriving from a
bastante fina,
very
com uma visão
fine-tuning of a
cliente,
capital
claro,
allocation
como o crédito
discipline,
como meio para eu
looking at the
capturar
clients
essa
as
relação
looking at
principal e
credit
financeira
as a
com o cliente, onde eu
way
consigo
to
capturar,
capture
eu vou
this
fazer,
principality
e
with
sem uma
my
expansão de
clients,
apetite, Brian,
and
super
with
importante.
no
Então,
appetite
sem uma
expansion. So
expansão
your
de
point
apetite,
is
dado que
important, Brian.
a gente
No
está
expansion
lendo
in
as
credit
mesmas
appetite,
notícias
because we're reading
vendo
the
que
same news
o
as you
mercado não está
are.
exatamente fácil,
The market is not
deteriorou,
exactly
a
easy.
economia
It
está bem até,
deteriorated.
mas o
The
mercado
economy is
está
doing quite
antecipando
well,
uma
but the market is
deterioração, seja de
anticipating
inflação, seja de juros
deterioration
e,
with
consequentemente,
inflation,
juros.
interest
Então,
rates
a gente não
increasing,
está
and
se
everything that
lançando
comes with
largos
that.
aqui para fazer
So
grande statement de,
we're
olha, vamos
not making
abrir,
this
e com
big
isso a gente
statement of
recupera o
saying,
ROT.
let's
Eu poderia até
continue to
crescer o ROT
recover
mais rápido se
ROA.
eu fizesse
I could
isso,
increase
mas eu não
my
acredito num
ROA
crescimento
faster if I
mais
did that,
sprint
but
mode.
I
Eu
don't
prefiro
believe in
crescer
sprint
mais
growth. I
marathon
prefer
mode
to
aqui e
grow
chegar
in
lá.
a
Não que
marathon
demore
mode and get there.
40
Not that
anos
we are
para a
going to
gente
take
saber
40
como
years
fazer
to
um
do it,
crescimento, mas eu
okay?
prefiro crescer de forma
But I
consistente
prefer to
e
grow
recorrente, e isso
consistently
toma alguns
in a
quilos a mais,
recurring
mas não
fashion.
muito
It will
mais do
take
que isso.
a couple more
Obrigado.
quarters, but not much more than that. Thank you.
Agora nós temos uma pergunta
Now,
do Eduardo
I have a
Rosman,
question
analista
from
do BTG
Eduardo
Pactual. Bom
Rosman
dia, Rosman.
with BTG Pactual. Rosman?
Oi, bom dia a todos.
Good morning,
Parabéns
everyone.
pelo resultado.
Congratulations on the
Queria fazer um
results.
follow-up no tema de
I have a follow-up
principalidade, né?
question
Acho que o Mário
regarding
falou bastante
primacy
disso,
or
dessa obsessão,
principality.
né?
Mario spoke a
E
lot about
disse que o
this
crédito não é
obsession.
o
And he
fim,
said that
né? Você
credit
falou muito de
is not the
comissões,
end
funding
itself.
e
He spoke a
também
lot
precificar o
about
crédito
fees and
bem.
commissions,
Mas como é que
funding,
a gente
and the
aqui de
right
fora, como
prices.
analista, consegue
But we as
acompanhar
analysts,
que
how
banco está fazendo
can
um
we
trabalho
follow
melhor
which
de
bank is doing the
principalidade, né? Porque
best
hoje todo
principality
mundo tem
work?
falado sobre isso
Because
e
all
fica muito
banks are talking
difícil
about that.
da gente
It's
acompanhar. O que
very
você
hard to follow.
sugeriria assim para a
What would
gente
you
olhar
suggest
e,
we
enfim, no
look
futuro te cobrar aí?
and that we ask
Obrigado.
about in the future? Thank you.
Não, ótimo, Rosman. Gostei.
Excellent, Rosman. I like this question.
De certa forma, eu
Well,
tentei
in a way,
tocar
I kind
em
of
como a gente está
tried
internamente se
to mention
cobrando.
how we are
E, sem dúvida,
internally
vocês deveriam
putting
nos
pressure
cobrar
on us.
de
And of
forma
course, you
razoavelmente convergente para a gente
should
poder falar
put
da
pressure
mesma
on
forma.
us as well so we
Mas
can
quando eu
speak the
falo
same
desses,
language. But I mean, when I
desses índices que eu
speak
citei aqui,
about
né,
these
das
indices,
comissões
these
por
ratios,
RWA, ou
fees
depósitos
per RWA,
baratos ou floating por
or
RWA,
cheap floating deposits
quando
per
eu falo de
RWA,
reduzir o custo de
when I
funding
speak about
estrutural do
reducing
banco
the
também,
structural
Rosman,
funding cost
isso
of the
também é uma
bank,
métrica de principalidade,
that's
porque
also a metric of
tem uma parte do
principality,
custo de
Rosman.
funding que tem a ver com
Because a
market
part
cap,
of the
vamos
cost
chamar
of
assim, onde eu
funding
estou
is related to
consistentemente pagando cada
wholesale,
vez
where I'm
menos os meus CDBs. A
consistently
gente fez
paying
emissões de
less for
dessas
my
no
CDPs.
passado
We had
recente a níveis
issuances of
historicamente
bills
super baixos também. Então tem
in the
essa
recent
parte que
past
tem
at
menos a
historical
ver com
low levels.
principalidade, mas
So
a
this has
redução do
less to
custo de
do with
funding
principality, but the
significa que eu
reduction in the
traga
cost of
floating
funding
de
means
forma muito
I'll
mais
bring
material dos
floating
clientes que
in a much more
transacionam comigo,
material
sejam
way of the
as grandes
clients that
empresas
have
que também
transactions
geram
with me.
dinheiro, deixam dinheiro
Corporates
parado na conta, as
that
pequenas e
have
médias,
money
e
sitting
sem
in
dúvida
the
PF, até mesmo
checking
private,
accounts,
né?
and
Porque todo
SMEs,
private também deixa lá seu
individuals,
saldo na
and
conta,
private
mas só
clients.
com aquele
They
cliente que
all
está
have
transacionando. Então,
balances in their
olhar
checking accounts.
comissões e olhar
So if we look
o
at fees
floating
and
e junto do
commissions and floating, and together
como
with
que o meu funding mix
floating,
está mudando.
how my
Então,
funding
o
mix
meu
is
funding não
changing.
mudou, a minha captação não mudou tanto
My
tri contra
funding
tri,
hasn't changed a
mas a
lot quarter
qualidade
on quarter,
mudou.
but the
Então, quando você
quality
olhar no
has
review, né, com
changed.
os detalhezinhos de
And
como
when
evoluiu,
we look at
e
the
a gente espera poder
details of
mostrar
this
isso ao
evolution,
longo
we
dos
expect to
próximos
show
meses, você vai
this
ver
in
uma
the coming
qualidade cada
quarters.
vez melhor.
You will see a
Então,
better
como
and better
medir a gente, se a
quality.
gente está fazendo
So
a gente de
how to measure
principalidade?
us in
Pela
terms of
evolução das
principality?
mandíbulas
By
em
the
quanto eu
evolution of
cresço
the jaws
capital,
in
RWA
terms of
versus
how I
quanto eu
can
cresço nas
grow
outras linhas.
capital versus
Obviamente tem que
RWA and
ser ao
versus
custo de
the other
crédito
lines
adequado, então
at
você
a
tem que
cost of
medir
risk
quanto
which is
evolui minha
adequate. You
margem de
have to measure
crédito
the evolution of
versus
the
quanto evolui minha PDD.
credit
Você tem que
NII
evoluir,
and
você
the
tem que ver
evolution
quanto
of
evolui minha margem como um todo, incluindo
loan loss
comissões versus quanto evolui minha
provisions.
PDD, porque
We
daí é o
have to
cross-sell
look
que eu
at
faço com o cliente.
fees
E,
in
obviamente, os
my
indicadores que a gente vai
ALL,
compartilhar mais
and
com
also
vocês
the
de como está
indicators that we'll
evoluindo
share with
o meu
you
número de
of
clientes
how we're
principais,
evolving
como
my
que essa
number of
agenda, do
principal
jeito que eu meço,
clients,
e aí cada banco
the way
vai
I
medir,
measure
claro,
it.
da
Every
sua forma,
bank
mas a
will
gente
measure
abre para vocês em
differently,
detalhes
but we
a
can
metodologia pela qual a
give you
gente
the whole methodology that we use for measurement, if this is a general interest, we can speak about this in the next call. But this is something we started developing a year ago. We'll spoke about loyal clients. But loyal clients regarding products. The main point is how clients feel the principality with the bank. So we measure principality, and we also, the jaws that we see spreading in our results, you will help us evaluate whether we're being successful or not. On our end, we'll be very disciplined in following these data, some of which I have mentioned here today. Thank you for the question. Thank you very much.
We will now turn to English with Tito Labarta from Goldman Sachs. Good morning, Tito.
Thank you, Camila. Good morning, Mario, Gustavo. Thank you for the call and taking my question. I want to ask you about the net interest income growth, I guess particularly maybe on the client NII, because thinking to your prior response on improving profitability, if we look at the client NII is growing around high single digits on a year-over-year basis. The market NII benefited a little bit as rates came down, but maybe there's a bit of a headwind there with rates going up or staying higher for longer. So how do you think about your ability to potentially accelerate the growth in client NII, particularly in maybe in a more challenging macro scenario and slightly more cautious tone that you have? Can you accelerate from here, or how do you think about the client NII growth in the current environment? Thank you.
Sure, Tito. Thanks for the question. So focusing on client NII, two variables, right? Volume and spread. So on the volume side, I already mentioned we are going to be focused on my marginal allocation of RWAs, focused on the marginal returns, on that credit and the capacity to cross-sell overall, on my overall broader client relationship. So that's already set. But I'm also going to focus on looking at the RWA density so that I can produce more portfolio with the same RWA. I didn't mention this before, so I'm going to be focused on all the angles. The marginal return, the cross-sellable return, and the RWA density. So that's on the volume side. But the most important part of the answer is really spread and pricing discipline. Not that we haven't done it in the past. Obviously, we've been disciplined, like the whole market, but we've been much more clinical over the past few quarters, particularly this one, as we look into the fifth derivative of every portfolio we have. I mentioned the INSS portfolio, the payroll loan portfolio, but that's the same as we've done in many other portfolios. We've looked at the credit cards portfolio, which is part of our growing agenda, and we found out that some cuts of our even higher income credit cards, they were more costly on the benefits I was giving to the client than the potential interchange and financing, which for these high income clients is a very limited sum. So my clinical analysis that I mentioned before has to do with all my marginal production, even in credit cards where I want to grow, at the Financiera, at the auto finance business, which Gustavo covered, and obviously on all other credit portfolios within individuals and SMEs. So the answer has to be on a very strict pricing discipline, which we believe we're having more and more. There's more to do, by the way. I don't think we're at the optimum stage, but we are gradually and rapidly actually growing into that direction. The combination of a volume that will keep growing, but not as steadily as in some businesses we have, but with a very strict pricing discipline, I believe we can continue to expand our clients NII. I won't give you like the percentage guidance type, but we should keep progressing on the credit side for sure. On the liability side, well, with rates going up, on the client margin, we will make more money, obviously, on deposits by definition. But when we look particularly at the credit side, the combination of better spreads, which we hope to continue on and on for the next quarters and hopefully years, and with some volume increase, the combination of those should be a positive jaws coming from client NII as well, credit client NII particularly.
Great, perfect. Thank you, Mario.
Thanks.
And with this, we end our Q&A session. I would like to thank all of you for joining us this morning. Immediately after this video conference call, myself and the entire Santander Brazil Investor Relations team will be available to answer any remaining questions you have. Thank you very much. Have a great day, and I see you next time. Thank you all. I'll see you next time.